do we learn? And how do we do that effectively? Often when we think about learning, we probably think about sitting in a classroom, listening to a lecture, or reading textbooks, and those are all great things. But with the Fuller Leadership Platform, we want to think about learning differently, and we want to think about how does the average adult learn? Think about a hobby, an activity, something that you really enjoy doing. I'd be willing to bet that you probably didn't learn that in a classroom, and you probably didn't learn it by reading it in a book. You probably actually did something. You probably engaged in some type of activity and practiced it over and over again, making mistakes and trying to be better. As we're designing learning for the Fuller Leadership Platform, I want to talk a little bit about guiding principles that are helping us design content for the platform. We have 4 guidelines that we're using to help us design content. First, we want to emphasize concrete, practical activities and engagement over theory and abstraction. Theory and abstraction are great, those aren't bad things, but often we learn better when we start with something that's concrete and something that we actually understand. Let me give you an example. If I was to tell you that the formula for measuring force is mass times acceleration, you're probably not thinking about how that applies. But that actually influences a lot of everyday things, and it influences things you may be interested in, like baseball. The reason why baseball players focus on the speed of their swing is that the faster their swing is, it will transfer more force into the baseball and make it fly farther. And you can see that when they hit home runs that are over 400 feet. Starting with that concrete, practical application helps us think about abstraction, and that's the way most humans think. We start with things that we know and abstract that into other ways that we can think about that. On the Fuller Leadership Platform, we want to start with concrete issues that people deal with every day and help them think about how that applies to more abstract situations. The second tenet that's guiding us is that interactivity and communal engagement are vital. Learning isn't a passive activity. Watching a video, reading a book, listening to a lecture are really great things, but they don't directly lead to learning. Active participation and engagement does. And we believe that on the Fuller Leadership Platform, the best way that people are going to learn is when they actually get skin in the game and actually start doing these activities together. And that's important too, doing these activities together. We can learn on our own, we can do it as an individual thing. But learning is inherently social. We learn from other instructors. We learn from our peers. And on the Fuller Leadership Platform, regardless of whether you're doing this individually or in a group, we want to make sure that you have opportunities to engage with trusted peers, mentors, and colleagues. The third tenet is that we want our content to be accessible anywhere by anybody. That includes whether you're doing this online, whether you're doing this in person with a group in your own organization. We want to make sure that our content can be consumed anywhere and for anybody. And the fourth tenet is that we want to encourage long-term practice over short-term engagement. Learning is difficult. It takes effort. It takes making mistakes. It requires trying over and over again until we get things right. Often we think of learning as a once and done thing. We earn our mastery and then we move on. But learning more often than not requires doing those practices over and over again. Anytime we create content for the platform, we want it to be the beginning of a learning journey and not the end of it. To simplify it, I'd sum this up in 2 ways. We want our learning to be embedded, and we want our learning to be embodied. We want it embedded in people's context. We want learners to know how to apply their learning regardless of where they live, what their social climate is, what their cultural climate is. We want this to be embedded within their context. And then we want this learning to be embodied. We don't want this to just be head knowledge. We want this to be holistic knowledge, something that you not only know, but something that you can also do. We think if we do those 2 things with the Fuller Leadership Platform, we're going to make learning as effective as it can possibly be.